Okay, chaps, so this is another lesson about the angle, the trig in the Cartesian plane. Okay, we're looking at angles that are between 0 to 360. And we already spoke last time that in the first quadrant, all of them are positive. In the second quadrant, just the sign is positive, the other two are negative. In the third, okay, it's the tan that is positive, and the fourth, it's the cosine that's positive, okay? This lesson is about trying to explain why it is. And as I said before I did this video, if you don't get it, it's not a disaster for this year, really not. But taking trig next year and the following year, it is what I'm going to tell you now is actually really important. So what does it actually mean, sine 150? It doesn't really make sense, isn't it? How can you have, or even more than 150, let's say 210. How can you have an angle of 210 in a triangle? So this is how we look at it, okay? So we're going to make a triangle, okay, that is made up from the center, from the origin. This is going to be a certain point, okay, on the Cartesian plane. It could be x and y. It has an x value, this is the x value, and this is the y value. Remember, we were drawing graphs already in grade 8, okay? Now, we're going to take the radius to be equal to 1. Okay, this is a circle, so the radius is what we normally call the hypotenuse. In this case, is the radius is 1. We'll say it's 1. It could work if you have any other radius. It's just easier if we say it is 1. Now, as it is now, this is this. Let's start with a point. Let's say this point is 2, 3. Okay, what will be the x value of this point? 2. Okay, so this value is 2. What will be the y value? 3. Okay? If this is the point 2, 3, what does 2, 3 mean? 2 is the x value, 3 is the y value. Let's now get rid of the 2 and the 3 and let's just call this xy, just like I did in the beginning. So this is a certain x, a certain y, this point here. That means this value, what is this? X. This is the x and this is the y. Okay? Now let's write down, I just want to make sure I'm not getting out of raising this, can move it a little bit more. Okay, make sure. Okay, so let's write down what is sine theta. I didn't tell you where this theta is. Where do you think the theta hiding? This is the theta. Yeah. This is your angle. We already spoke about it. It's always you noticed that it's always anti-clockwise. Okay. What is sine theta equal to? I always start this lesson. What is sine theta?
Opposite over
hypotenuse. What is it? It's y over
r.
What is our hypotenuse? 1. R, which we always said is 1. Now you'll see why I chose it as 1. So in other words, sine theta, I'll write it down here. No. In other words, sine theta is equal to y, right? Because divide by 1 is the same. Okay? Right, what is cosine theta?
Adjacent over here.
You guys are good. Okay, adjacent. What is the adjacent side? X divided by 1, which is equal to x. Okay? Tan theta?
Opposite over adjacent.
Y over x, the opposite over the adjacent. So from now on, okay, whenever we talk about trig, you're not constricted to this one triangle. It's basically, that's the definition of trig. Think about a circle with a radius 1, okay, and if you got that point, the sine is basically your y value in this circle, the cosine is the x value, and the tan is just the y over x. Okay? At the end. Okay, I'll just pause here for a second and see if there's any questions. Okay, so before I draw another triangle, what I'm going to try and use this to explain why the sine, the cosine, and tan are positive and negative in different places. But let's start, because I've got, this is the first quadrant, okay? We know that they're all positive, right? But we can also see it from here, because what is the y here? Is it positive or negative?
Positive.
It's positive. It's above the x line, okay? Anything above the y will be positive. So sine is positive, y is positive, so sine is positive, okay? So y is positive here, y larger than 0, okay? So sine is positive. What about the x? What is the x here? Positive or negative?
Positive.
It's positive because it's to the right. So x is also positive. So if x is positive, also the cosine is positive. As you can see, cosine is positive. Okay? Now, if both x and the y are positive, what is positive divided by positive?
Positive.
Also positive. So also the tan is positive. They're all positive in the first quadrant. Okay?
Yeah.
Right. Let's pause here and we'll move to the second quadrant. So now we're finally going to cross this 90 degrees barrier. Until now, until 90 degrees, we just looked with cute little triangles. We didn't have to talk about this circle. Okay? Now we smash this barrier. Okay? The angle is always from the x-axis. Okay? This angle is larger than 90 or smaller than 90? It's larger than 90. It's larger than 90, but it's smaller than 180. So we're in the second quadrant. Okay? Now, if I just work with these triangles, it doesn't make sense to have an angle that is larger than 90. You can't have a 90 and another angle with another 90. You've got a question? Let me just pause. Okay, so the question is, what does sine theta is? And the answer is, yeah?
180 minus.
Yeah, no, you will get there later, but actually not even this year. Okay? But sine theta is we're using the same definition here. So what is sine? What does it tell us? The sine theta is y. It's still the y value. It's y divided by 1 because the radius is equal 1. This is the y and this is the x, isn't it? It's the same. It doesn't matter the triangle now is on this side. This is the x value. This is the y value. So sine theta is still y. Cosine theta is still the x. Tan theta is still y over x. Okay? Just pause here.
So where's the radius?
Right. So now, as Wenger said, okay, so but there is one thing that is different to the second quadrant, the first quadrant. The y here is still positive because we're above the x-axis, but the x is negative. So the y is still positive, the x is now negative. And check out what we get. If the y is positive, what can you tell me about the sign?
It's positive.
It's positive, and it really is. But the x is negative, so what is the cosine?
Negative.
Negative, and you can see it is. Okay? And the tan, what is the tan? Y over x. So I've got positive divided by negative. What is it? Negative, and indeed it is negative. Can you see how things clicking into place? Okay? I'll pause here, we'll move to the third quadrant. Right, third quadrant. We're over here between 180 to 270. The angle, let me just draw it up a little bit. Okay? The angle, as Luano just asked me, is always from the x-axis all the way to this hypotenuse, or radius. Okay, remember this is 90 degrees. The radius is still 1. Okay? Okay, this is still the x, this is the x, and this is the y. Okay? So what can you tell me about x? Is x negative or positive?
Negative.
X is negative here. And the y?
Negative.
Also negative. And now we can figure out here. If the y is negative, what about sine? Negative. Indeed, it is negative. The x is also negative, so cosine is also negative. Okay, the tan is y over x. What do you reckon tan will be? Negative divided negative is positive. So tan really is positive. Cool, eh?
Okay, I understand. But sir, isn't that...
Okay,
No,
okay,
it's
got it.
positive.
Got it. So now we're in the third quadrant. Okay, this is my point. The radius is still 1. Okay, this is my x. Okay, and this is my y over here. Okay, I'm between 270 to 360. Okay, what's happening to x here?
It's positive.
It's positive because I'm on the right. The y?
Negative.
Still negative because I'm below the x. So let's go over it, okay? Y negative meaning sine is?
Negative.
Y is negative, so sine is negative, which it should be. X is positive, so cosine is?
Positive.
Also positive. Tan is y over x, so tan will be negative because one is positive, one is negative, and tan is negative. Okay? That's it. I will answer questions now, but if you get what I just said now, that will help you so much, especially next year.
Can I write this down?
Okay? Yes, I'll pause for question and I think you should copy it down.